Hi, and welcome back to STARR, Startling Tales about Radical Responsibility. And today's tales has 3 titles because I couldn't decide which one would be best. First title is It's Not About Winning the Game, It's About Sourcing the Game. The second title is Oriented Towards Outcome, Shift into the Dance. And the third title, which was the original title, is The Rules of Engagement Are Not the Key, the Shared Context Is. And this is about considering how are you engaging with what you want to create and from which context. And if you look, you could choose like the context that we've been given a lot by modern culture and that might have like contaminated your way to create what you want, is to have a context that is oriented towards an outcome, like towards a result. In a way, it's oriented towards this thing of, I want to win this game. And you decide when the game ends, like what's the outcome, what's this result that you want to get to. But when you think about, if you're oriented towards winning the game and you have this outcome, it's always in the future. So then you're engaging with your creation, also your space holding, as we're trying to get over there. And that means here in the present, you're always short of winning. You're always not winning. You're always, in a way, you're always failing at what you want to create. So that's sort of one aspect of having a context that's oriented towards getting somewhere, what I call winning the game. But there's also this other side that I want to talk about, because I think that's the way that that's where we see the symptoms of this context of trying to win a game. It's about the kind of rules of engagement of how do we play this game, like how do we play creation. And this can apply very much to you holding space for your family, like how does it go at home. But it could also be for a transformational space, it could also be for a community, it could be for an Archaeology Invention Center, but it could also go all the way to your nano nation or a global project, such as writing a Gaian constitution or text that would define like how can humanity play this game of being human on planet Earth that is, for example, regenerative. So it's not enough to say it's a Gaian constitution or it's regenerative. The question is, what is this context with which we are engaging with the game called humanity? So if you look at like all these different domains where you can be holding space and the kind of rules of engagement that you establish, which would be, in the case of the Gaian Constitution, would be like the content of the Constitution, which is like how do we play this game, would be oriented towards trying to move people, trying to have people like behave in a certain way so that we could get the outcome that we're looking for, like this game, the winning this game, which could very well be seem very reasonable, such as world peace, or even creating regeneration, or which can look like planting trees, like a certain number of trees, or it could be about having integrity or having care for each other, or being radically honest. So all of those could be this desire for, this is what I want my context to be, this is what I want my communities to be. And therefore, if you're oriented towards this winning this game, like getting there, you're going to create rules of engagement that say, if you don't do this, then you can't play the game. So that's one of the ways to, that's the result of having rules of engagement in that context, is that you have to enforce those rules of engagement. And one of the most powerful way that modern culture has found to enforce rules of engagement is under the threat of punishment, whether it's physical pain or prison or even fine. Like all of that is if you don't follow the rules, somebody, meaning the police, the guardians, will come to ensure that you do. I mean, and you can see the kind of irony of like, if you want peace, and the only way that you get peace is by enforcing the rules through a form of violence, whether it's physical violence, but it could also be very much reward violence, like psycho-emotional violence of like, if you follow the rules, then you will be rewarded. You will be rewarded with money or with attention or with status, or you'll be rewarded by just not being punished, which could also be like, if you follow my rules of engagement, I will not withdraw my attention from you. I will not withdraw my love from you. And you would know this for yourself, but kids are so sensitive to when they behave, what is the consequence that happens in response to their behavior. And so if they notice, oh, if I do one behavior, I get love is taken away from me, then I'm going to do the behavior that creates the outcome of receiving love. So we've really been conditioned to respond to this and to also look for, what are the rules? Like, what are the rules of this game so I can win? Like, I can get that certificate that tells me I'm a space holder. I can get that spot in that community where I can live and be safe for the rest of my life. I can create a Gaian constitution. Like, I'm going to create a text that will be approved by people who will agree to play by these rules, from the place of, if we play by these rules, we'll get this outcome. So it's a context that is about what I call winning the game. And like you see, it has really profound consequences about how you relate to people, because it's also full of assumptions that if people say, hey, I want to play this game, you assume that they want to obey all these rules of engagement, or that they agree to all these rules of engagement, instead of probably what's happening is they want to play the game for other shadow purposes of belonging or safety or being important or having a place in society. So then there's this question of, okay, what would be a completely other context in which there would be no need to enforce rules of engagement. So it's not like there would be no rules of engagement, or that the rules of engagement would be ignored, which is just this thing about ignoring the rules is a reaction in a way to so much violence of this winning the game context is, oh, people can do whatever they want. And if you have that, like whether it's a family or, community, oh my God, at a global level, is you have a hippie drop-in joint where people get there basically to be taken care of, to consume and let child ego state and gremlin ego state free of like this freedom of responsibility. Like this is the kind of context you would be creating. Which is reactive to the context of responsibility through force, or outcome through force, production through force. So this other context that I think is actually this context that's emerging on planet Earth, and that is still very much being discovered, is this context that is oriented towards the evolution of consciousness. So it's an infinite game. It's a terminology that's been discovered by James P. Carse in his book Finite and Infinite Game. It's the game that says, it's the game of the way you play the game is to source the game so that the game never ends. That would be the context of coming from not trying to get to an outcome, but trying to get into the dance of the evolution of consciousness. And so so you have to consider, well, then how do I make those rules of engagement work? Like, how do I guard a context? How do I guard a space? Like, how do I am a steward of what I want? The difference is, what you want is not a future fantasy. What you want is who you are. What you want is your stand. And your stand then can come into life and into presence as you're creating, as you're negotiating with other people, as you're getting into this dance of learning, like basically, I mean, learning about yourself, but it's really taking responsibility for yourself, for your stand, for your shadow world, for what you want to create, for what you're feeling. And this idea of, it's like Disney World in a way. It's like every time you engage with this dance for taking more responsibility for who you are and what you are, you go on a ride. But also every time you empower and hold space for other people to discover more of who they are and more of what their stand is about, then you go on the ride with them. And so the whole thing, it's about going on rides without really knowing where that ride will lead. The compass is like this presence with yourself and this radical honesty with yourself, whether that reveals your upper world and your stand and your connection with your pride principles, or whether that reveals your underworld. In a way, it doesn't matter, because each of those steps, like each of those risks that you take to reveal yourself or to and to communicate that with other people, is food for the game to keep going. And so, I mean, the other part is sort of a longer conversation, but it's about this title that I said. It's like, it's not about winning the game, it's about sourcing the game. But to get it, that when you are your stand in action, that means whether people want to play that game with you or not, in a way, it doesn't matter, because you're on the ride, you're on the roller coaster. And that's really what your being and your archetypal lineage is longing for, to just like, let's play the game of the evolution of consciousness. The rules of engagement have a different purpose. So the rules of engagement are not trying to move people into a certain level of behavior or certain kind of behavior to create the outcome that you wanted, this future outcome. The rules of engagement are stepping stone. They're tools to start an evolutionary process. They're doors for people and yourself to keep learning more about yourself, and therefore having more space, more matrix, more awareness about how to be your stand in action. So, for example, this is a quick example about a rule of engagement, is if you choose a rule of engagement about that's from the context of winning the game, let's say about something very simple of integrity of people arriving on time. If you want this outcome, I want people to arrive on time, then you create this rule of engagement of if you are not on time, you get kicked out. Another way so from a perspective of the consciousness of evolution, you have this rule of engagement of, if you are not on time, the door is closed, like you cannot enter the room, and please ask for an emotional healing process, a listening space, a skill to build, so that you can notice what is happening in you, so that you can't arrive on time. So even if in a way the result is the same, like the door is closed, the purpose behind it and the result that it will create is wildly different. So here's a short introduction about this difference, the difference of different games, like trying to win the game or trying to source the game.